Picture a candidate on a mountain trail at 3 in the morning. No instructor. No scoreboard. No headlamp at the next checkpoint waiting to clock him in. He just walked 30 miles with a 50-pound rucksack across the West Virginia ridgelines in winter, and the only person who knows his time is him. He thinks he passed. He did pass. Every physical event the United States Army can throw at a man, he just passed. And a panel he will never lay eyes on is about to send him home anyway. Most people assume the toughest unit in the American military wants the strongest alpha in the room. Most people are confidently, demonstrably wrong. Delta Force does not want the man who walks into a room and fills it. Delta Force wants the man who walks through a room and is never quite remembered. The final filter of Delta selection is not a march, it is a conversation, and the man on the other side of that conversation is being measured for a personality trait. The rest of the American military spends 20 years actively training out of him. That panel has a name: the Commander's Board. Eric Haney, one of the first men through the course, wrote that Delta gives a candidate no scores and no feedback on purpose. Stay to the end, for the single trait the board is really measuring, the one most candidates never even know is being tested, and subscribe now, so the next selection breakdown reaches you first. Walk into any infantry battalion in the United States Army, and the men who get promoted are the men who project. They speak first in the morning brief. They are louder in the chow line. They are visible. They are decisive in a way that other men can see. The Army does not promote them by accident. The Army needs them. A platoon under fire is held together by a man who can be heard above the volume of the gunfight. That man, by definition, has a presence. The Army calls that presence leadership, and the modern American officer corps is built to produce it at industrial scale. Then walk a few hundred yards across Fort Bragg, into the Ranger Regiment compound. The Rangers want the same trait, tuned for a different role. The Ranger fire team leader who hesitates does not survive. The Ranger squad sergeant, who cannot project, loses control of his squad on the objective. Across the river at the Special Forces compound, the Green Beret captain, who advises a foreign battalion, is not a wallflower either. He sits in foreign messes, drinks foreign whiskey, signs foreign documents, and brings a battalion of strangers around to an American plan. He is a salesman with a rifle. He has to fill the room. Up and down the conventional army, and out into the legitimate special operations community, every selection course is built to identify and reward the soldier who is comfortable being seen. He carries weight on his shoulders the way another man carries it in his rucksack. He has been told since his first day in uniform that the leader is the man at the front, the man the others look at when they want to know what to do next. That trait is the alpha. It is the most useful personality in the American military. It is the wrong personality for the unit Charles Beckwith built at Fort Bragg in 1977. Delta selection runs in 2 phases. The first phase is physical, and the public knows it well. Land navigation events in the West Virginia mountains around Camp Dawson run alone, in any weather, with no feedback. Candidates do not see their times. They do not see their grades. They do not know if they finished in the top half of the class or the bottom half. They turn in their map at the end of an event and walk to the next event, and they wait. The deliberate withholding of information is itself a test. The Army the candidate came from is structured around constant feedback. Range cards score the rifle qualification. Promotion boards score the soldier. Every event has a number attached to it. A candidate at Camp Dawson is, for the first time in his career, operating in the dark. The man who can hold himself together in that dark, who can plan the next event without confirmation that he passed the last one, has shown the panel a trait nobody can fake. When the final physical event ends, the candidates who survived the marches gather at a building they have not been allowed to enter before. They go in one at a time. Inside that building is the Commander's Board. A panel of Delta Squadron commanders, sergeants major, and Delta operational psychologists. The board has the candidate's file. The board has his land navigation data. The board has the observation notes from the cadre who watched him in the mountains. The board also has a list of questions, and those questions are not about the marches. The The commander's board can drop a candidate who passed every physical event. That is the part of selection the documentaries do not capture, because no camera has ever been allowed inside the room. A man can carry the rucksack for 30 miles and lose his place on the bus home over the way he answers the question why he wants to be in the unit. The marches were the warm-up. The conversation is the test. The panel is not measuring intelligence the way an officer selection board measures it. Delta candidates have already been screened for intelligence. The panel is not measuring physical courage. The marches measured that. The panel is measuring a trait the United States Army does not have a word for, and that the operators themselves describe in 3 pieces. The first piece is self-reliance. The candidate has to function for long periods without being told he is doing well. The Army trained him to look for confirmation. The unit will deploy him into a foreign capital where there is no chain of command in the next office to confirm anything. He will plan, he will execute, he will improvise, and he will report back when the work is done. Until then, he is alone, and his nervous system has to be capable of staying calm inside that loneliness for as long as the work takes. The second piece is what the operators inside the unit call comfort with ambiguity. It is a deliberately chosen phrase. The operator on a long-duration mission rarely knows the answer to most of the questions he is paid to answer. He works on partial information. He works under a cover identity that may be partially burned. He works with a deadline that may shift without warning. The candidate who cannot tolerate a working day that does not resolve cleanly at 5 in the afternoon is the candidate who quietly burns out 3 months into his first deployment. The board is screening for it in the conversation. The third piece is the absence of a hunger for validation. The candidate who needs the room to recognize him cannot do this work. He cannot be the man in a foreign hotel lobby that nobody notices. He cannot resist showing the rifle range, the medal, the unit photograph that confirms who he is. The unit will give him no public credit for the rest of his career. If he needs that credit, the board sends him home. Together, those 3 pieces describe a personality the rest of the Army considers a problem. Delta considers it the entry standard. The Alpha personality is not weak. The Alpha personality is a high-functioning operator in nearly every other professional context the American military offers. The problem is not the man, it is the mismatch between the man and the work the unit does. Consider what the unit asks of an operator on a typical week. He moves through a foreign city he does not officially exist in. He is on his second cover identity that month. He has a meeting with an asset who is risking his own life by sitting in the same coffee shop. He is being watched by a host nation intelligence service that does not know he is American but is suspicious enough to take photographs. He has to walk in, conduct the meeting, walk out, and disappear into a city of 9 million people without leaving a trace anyone can describe later. Now ask whether the Alpha personality is suited to that work. The Alpha enters the coffee shop, and the waiter remembers his face an hour later. The Alpha takes a phone call, and the man at the next table notices the cadence of his voice. The Alpha sits in a foreign mess hall and unconsciously corrects another soldier's grip on a fork. The Alpha, even on his quietest day, leaves a wake in the water behind him that a trained observer can follow. He cannot help it. The trait was built into him by 20 years of being rewarded for projection. The unit cannot afford that wake. Not on a meeting where the asset's life is on the line. Not on the close target reconnaissance phase that precedes a direct action raid. Not on the days of patient surveillance that determine whether the target is where the planner thinks he is. The Alpha is the wrong tool for the work, not because he is weak, but because he is loud in a job that pays for silence. The commander's board has watched Alpha candidates wash out for 45 years. Not by failing the marches, by passing the marches and then revealing, in 20 minutes of conversation, that the marches were the only part of the job they were ever going to be good at. The trait the board is really measuring, the one the open loop at the start of this video promised, has a name the operators use among themselves. The man who does not need a room. The man who can walk into any space and be entirely indifferent to whether the people in it are paying attention to him. The man whose nervous system was built, somewhere in his early life, to operate without an audience. That phrasing is not a poetic exaggeration. The psychological cadre at the unit interviews for it directly. They ask the candidate about his teenage years. They ask him about the moment he decided to join the army. They ask him about his marriage, his hobbies, his time alone. They are listening for one thing in his answers. They are listening for a man who can describe a life that is rich and full and complete without ever once requiring another person to notice it. That man is rare. The American culture the candidate grew up in trains the opposite. Social media trains the opposite. Sports culture trains the opposite. Even the platoon culture of the conventional army trains the opposite. The unit is asking a candidate to walk into the board having survived all of that with his independence from the audience intact. Most candidates cannot. Most candidates are sent home. The ones who pass are the ones who were already, before they ever heard the word Delta, the strangest kind of soldier the American military produces. The one nobody can quite describe. Here is the line that will start the argument. The best operator you will ever meet is a man you would walk straight past, and the loudest man in any unit is usually the first one cut. If you served, tell us, was the strongest man in your unit the quiet one or the loud one? If this changed how you think about who really gets in, subscribe. The next video shows you the half-second decision that separates a Delta operator from everyone else.